Good evening, everyone. I'm Rhythm Gawa, a student of Year 3 of the BDES program in Humanizing Technology. On behalf of NMIMS School of Design, I extend a warm welcome to the speaker for today, Ms. Priyanka Agrawal, who will be educating us on the topic, how to prepare for a professional design career. Since this is a virtual event, we request you to please mute your microphones and turn off your videos. However, questions are most welcome. Please put your questions in the chat section. We'll be taking them at the end. The more you question, the more you explore. So without further ado, let me introduce Ms. Priyanka Agrawal. Ms. Priyanka is the country head at Isobar Consulting and the co-founder and chief strategy officer at Fractal Inc. During her 20 years of experience, she's worn multiple hats such as entrepreneur, mentor, evangelist, and designer, to name some. She started her career as an architect and went on to pursue experience design by acquiring a master's degree in graphic design from Middlesex University in London. Post her graduation, she joined one of the leading design agencies, DMGT, Daily Mail and General Trust in London, as a new media designer. With a strong motivation to bring about a change in the field of experience design and help propagate the role of user experience in the digital industry in India, Ms. Priyanka returned to India to start up on her own. Today, that startup is named among the largest and the best in the country for experience design. Ms. Priyanka is also an active mentor on several startup groups like iAccelerator IIM Ahmedabad, IQ Bootcamp Mumbai, and TIE Mumbai. Her objective is to instill the idea of how good experience marks the base of an excellent digital product amongst young startup communities. Today, Ms. Priyanka Agrawal will talk about preparing for a professional design career. Look forward to an engaging session. Ms. Priyanka, the virtual stage is yours.
Thank you so much. And I think it's a little embarrassing to hear so much. I don't think I've done that much as you've explained. So, but thank you so much for the introduction. I actually wanted to keep this session a lot more interactive, as in, you can ask questions and, please feel free to interject and say if you have anything to add or any experiences you would want to add along as we go in the session. But when I saw that it is a 2-hour session, I thought I need to have a presentation of sorts. So I have something to show, but I think I would still want everybody to be more participative to make it, a lot more contextual to what you all want to take away from this session. So I will share my screen, and it's not really a presentation. It's just a story which we will go through. But the idea for me today was to interact with you and see where you are in your journey and what we as industry people actually look for in young budding designers, and how is that whole portfolio presentation plus the interviews plus post the interviews, how does that entire journey pan out, and how do you prepare yourself? Some pointers around that, and we'll elaborate as we go, right? So I'll straight away deep dive into it. So yes, I am Priyanka. I currently don't look like this, but I want to imagine then that this is how I still look, probably. And so as I said, I don't have a big presentation not because I'm worried about you that you will get bored and I'm empathetic, but the truth is I really don't know much. I have a basic knowledge, but so the idea really is to answer the questions along with you today. So to start the learning, the one thing which has been a key to my understanding of the entire space of design space, so to say, is that as Benjamin Franklin put it, that you tell me and I forget, you teach me and I remember, but you involve me and then I learn. So that is the basis of any product which we design, or even when we are selling ourselves, our design studio, our service capabilities, or we are hiring. That is the entire basis of how can we have involved experiences created. Even you sending out your resumes, your portfolios to companies is a part of involving them and saying that, how do you engage with them, with the companies or in the industry in the larger context. So, but what are the things that involve us, right? So you need to start and break it down, saying that these are conversations, these are experiences, these are events, movies, acts, different problems which we face, our trends, the different things which involves us around, in and around our micro and our macro life is what we should be aware of. Now, what all of this means is that these are all the basis of the stories which we tell, and stories are all about people, and we as people need to be able to tell our stories properly. So what does it essentially mean? So you are the hero of your own story. You are the hero that makes up that you are sending your, when you are sending your biodata or your portfolio or your work to companies, you are selling your as a product, right? In raw terms, that's what industry is, that you are the protagonist of your own story. This is the ambition which you have. How did you take risks, and what were the conflicts that came your way? What were the challenges? How did you overcome them? And those resolutions, how did you make? How did they make you the person you are today? And how will the company benefit from your experience? Think of it as a story you are trying to tell the company. Now, again, I mean, this I've already said it. Who are you? What is your background? What sets your personality? What is the trait which you have as a person which will interest industry which you're going in? What is your goal? What do you want to do? What is the aspiration which you have? So I know, I'm sure that, as a part of the NMIMS curriculum, you have this basis of student which you do across the different types of projects which you would have done throughout. Now, how does it actually transform, and how do you actually build this story for the companies which you're selling? Now, each and every story would be different, but the way I would tell a story right now at the place where I am, I'll just give you a snapshot of what, how, it's more visual, how it is more, saying that it's just the key points of where the turning points of the journey has been. Now, like, for example, when we graduated from college, from the architecture college, we had a very small one-room kitchen apartment in Mumbai. Now, we did a couple of jobs here and there, but at some point we decided, the dream was to have a big shiny office there. So, and it was zameen pe lage hue, we were sleeping there. And during the day, that same thing became an office. Now, the story behind that was that, I was working for some 10,000 rupees a month in 1999 or 2000 is what, of 30,000 as a project. And I said that, I'm sorted for 3 months. Why don't I give it a shot and create my own company? And so with that backing of 3 months, because I would have got at 30,000 along the 3 months, and I would be sorted. So I left the job and started the company. And so now this was home, office, home, daytime, nighttime. That was the story that continued. But the dream was always there that, you want to make it big in the industry. So we built this company, it grew substantially. We sold that company off to a bigger company, which actually merged with a London-based company, and then we were placed in London to stabilize business between London and India. And so hence began the journey of the new shore, new journeys, new dreams, and we packed everything when we were at the peak of that startup, and went and pursued this new degree in London, brought new ideas to the table, learned new things along the way. Worked there for some time, but what happened across in the, when we spent around 4 or 5 years in London, and that 5-year itch of doing something new, doing something interesting again, started creeping in. And at that point, we started feeling, we've done one startup, we've made it successful, we are here now, but how long can we continue doing a job? So we again wanted to do a startup and come back to India and do that all over again, right from scratch. So we disrupted everything again, came back with a bang. And since 2010, when we returned, we started from scratch, like it was a garage-like setup when we started. And today, this is the company. It's a 150 people organization now. It's in the heart of Mumbai, in South Bombay. It is one of the leading design studios in the country, with overseas, international and Indian clients in equal splits. And we're very proud of what we have built till now. So in a sense, my idea of telling you this story was that, how rather than being very verbose in the kind of display which you do of your talent, of your journey, of your achievements, okay, are there different methods which you can deploy to have an engaging content with the industry. So that was the idea, based on all the kind of years of experience which I have, and this is in no way so to say cast in stone kind of a thing. You have to build your own commandments. But for me as an entrepreneur, as an industry person who has actually been a part of a lot of discussion with young budding professionals, these are some things which I have called out as learnings from those things. So there are just 10 pointers I will point out right now. One is that, and this is very, very important for me, that don't oversell yourself. When I say oversell, that in your capabilities deck, when you write that I can do A, B, C, D, 10 things, people get confused that what exactly is your strength, what exactly is the key distinguisher which you bring to the table. And when you oversell yourself, when you are actually inducted and when the responsibilities are given to you, then, and if you fall short, you have overpromised and underdelivered. So in that scenario, in that case, what becomes problematic is for the company to rightly assess you and give you the right kind of experience which you would have wanted. They would have placed you in a different place wherein you would ideally be fitting into some other role much better. So be very careful of what you're selling. I know it is very important for us when we write this thing that we have done 10 things and we have a lot of learnings which we have done in the past, but be true to yourself, be honest about what you have. Even when you write down the team capability, so you have given say a project which is done in team. So you have 4 or 5 people, different people bring different strengths. Make sure that you highlight that what was your contribution to the entire thing, and not take the credit of the entire project on yourself. Because one, it doesn't look true, and the second, you're again setting yourself up for failure. So we have seen scenarios wherein people have said, we have done this fantastic job, right from research to discovery to the kind of solutioning and doing the last mile as well. Now, when asked the real question that what was exactly your contribution to the entire project, it comes out to be a very small part. But if rather than the person or the interviewer digging it out and finding it out, if it was upfront, it makes a very honest conversation between the two parties, right? So, and also, as you have to understand that industry people realize that colleges can give you, or the education can give you a level of understanding, a level of tools to, learn from. But at the same time, you are coming in the professional field to learn. So they don't expect you to know everything, and it is fine not to know everything. So one very important thing according to me is, don't oversell yourself. Should I take a pause for any questions? Because I think I don't give a breather for people to talk in between. Should I take a pause and see if there are any questions here?
Ma'am, as of now in the chat, we don't have. If anyone wants to unmute and ask, please go ahead.
Okay, I think then I will move on.
Yes, ma'am.
The second very important thing which we feel is that people come unprepared about where they're applying. So they apply in 10 different places, and there are, when they come for the interview, and if you ask them, what do you know about our company or our culture, not culture, but our company and what we do exactly and what is our strength, the research is missing. So when you've applied, you need to know, will you fit in that company or not? Or is that the kind of work which they do, is that something which you align yourself with or not? I know the first thing which we do is we just want one internship or one first job to start with, and anything and everything comes our way is fine. But it makes a very good impression if you know exactly what the company does where you're applying. So being unprepared or not doing enough research about the company where you're applying to actually will set you back in the real conversation which you could have had, or you could have molded the conversation. That goes true when you're sending your application as well, in the sense that when you're it is a good idea to retweak your pivot to your resume or your portfolio in a way that you can contribute to the company you're applying to. So then you're engaging with the people whom you're going to meet. So if you know that who your interviewer is going to be or whom are you going to interact with, it's a good idea to do a little bit of research, do a LinkedIn search, not stalk people, but at the same time, do your research about whom you're talking to. What have they last said on LinkedIn, for example, or what their websites does, what is the new case study which has come out, something that interests you, some takeaway from there, that make the conversation real to people whom you're talking to. So don't have a cookie cutter approach to applying to everybody, just sending out mass resumes. Customize it to the company you're sending it to. So do your research well. Third and very important thing is that how do you stand out? And I remember one example, and this is 6-7 years back. There was a girl who applied to us, and her portfolio was very visual, in the sense that her first picture on the portfolio was she was standing with the mustache image on top. Now that image has stuck with us for the longest time, and we give this example quite a number of times, because there she has added a quirk about her. And that image itself said a lot of things, and it can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. So without saying too much, she has said that, she's trying to stand up in a man's world. She's trying to make her mark. She's different. She's not the usual, A4 size resumes written and sent across to companies. So I'm saying that add that your personality, your quirk, your differentiator, so that people can remember that. And the listing becomes a lot more easier. People do not have the attention span to read each and every word which you have written. So what you can do differently is something which will make you stand apart from the other resumes which have come along. So as a professional, even, and this is not only when you're sending out for the job interviews or for internship, it also holds true for even when you're presenting to clients or your idea presentation. How do you make it different, and how do you hold attention from your audiences you're talking to at this point? So make sure that when you're put some thought into it, like you do a solutioning exercise, like you do your design thinking method, apply your design thinking methods to your, building your own showcase or your story to the world. So do that level of exercise with yourself as well. The fourth thing is layering your presentation, and I think it's very, very important. We have seen a lot of lengthy text. Like, I know that there is a lot of process which we follow in terms of showcasing any project, that there is a research, there was usability testing, there was, contextual inquiry which you did, and all of that is written and substantiated with the different images. The idea is that, if you read newspapers, that a newspaper can be read in 2 minutes, it can be read in 10 minutes, and it can occupy your entire 2 hours as well, right? So how do you break it down? So the top headlines can give a person in 2 minutes a snapshot of what has happened in the entire thing. So divide your portfolio in such a way that, if I don't want to read the entire thing, in 2 minutes, I understand what are the key takeaways, what were the key challenges, and what did you actually, how did you actually solutionize it? In just a snapshot of one-liners each, I can take that takeaway. If I want to just read a deep down in, 5-7 minutes, a subheading or a subtext actually tells me a little more in detail of what it is. But if I have the time and I'm more interested in it, you're pulling me into the content, then I will go ahead and reach each and every element of what you have written. This goes true for any presentation which you're doing. So layer your presentation very, very well, because people actually don't read that much. They will see the visuals, they will feel, yes, this is something that might fit their bill, and they will move forward, shortlist left or right kind of a scenario. So make sure that you grab that attention on each and every project and have those key takeaways clearly highlighted on each presentation. Now, when it comes to you going in for an interview or having a conversation with the people whom you want to work with, it is very important that we don't come across as we know everything, right? And this is something which we have also seen quite a number of times in the sense that, the standpoint which people come from is that, we have done this in the company, we have in the college, we have learned this, and we can do this very fantastically, and we have, everything, we can take care of with that standpoint. If you just shift that conversation saying that, yes, we have touched upon this, but we want to go more in detail on the actual life projects and on the reality of what happens on ground, and see that, we want to learn a lot more. Like we at this stage also, we say whenever we are going in for new projects, acquiring new projects as well, we actually say that, this is a new thing and we would want to do it differently, and hence it is a learning experience for us even now. So having done thousands of projects, also the standpoint still that what can we learn from the new things which we are doing. So very important thing, don't be arrogant about what you know, be humble about it, but at the same time, make sure that your mental setup is that wherever I go, whatever I do, I need to learn more and more. And the people, when they are talking to you, they will figure out that, it is you will be a good team player because you're here to learn. So you would want to interact with a lot of people and take whatever best you can gather from each one of them. So keep your learning hats always on. People like people who are always on the, let's do this, let's try this, let's figure out what is happening here. So make learning, keep doing things as your priority. And that is the kind of vibe people like when they are kind of interviewing or seeing how enthusiastic the person is in terms of trying hands on different things. So be okay with being pushed into out of your comfort zone at that in some way. Now, okay, the sixth one, and this is the most important one, and this is where, for us, especially at Tracklink, our interview process actually goes beyond what we expect. It is more to do with how aware are you of what is happening new? Can you contribute from the business side of it? Can you contribute to, where not what is, but what if things happened, then what would you do? In that scenario, like say, for example, right now, I don't know how many of you know that WhatsApp is in trouble because of the data privacy things. Now, when we are having a group discussion or when you're having a chat around the table, do you have a point of view about that? Do you know that something like this is happening currently? And if WhatsApp is going, what new is coming into the scenario? So is there Signals? There is Telegram? And what are the problems which happens in each one of them, or are they equally bad as Instagram? Do you have an opinion around it? It's good to have opinions around things. It's good to have knowledge about what is happening. So things like, we normally ask people things like, because we are an experienced design studio, we ask them that what are the best, virtual reality apps which you have played around with? And and if you were to improve it, what would you do? So it's not what you have done, but how much knowledge you have of things which are being released, startups being funded, or new technologies which are coming in, new problems in the digital space, what is happening. So be aware, and it is important to read a lot around these things and keeping yourself updated with the current trends and technologies which are coming in. This will give you an edge over your contemporaries who do not do that much research, because then you contribute at a different level. You're not an implementer, you are a thinker. And if you are a thinker, you need to have this, the base of the knowledge with you. So yeah, so I mean, make sure that you keep reading, at least dedicate half an hour, 1 hour of every day reading about things and reading about new things which are coming up, not only in India, but globally, and have your opinions around it. People love people with opinions. Not fighting about it, but not arrogant about it, but having opinions and valid reasoning about your opinion of why you have it. So yeah, that is important. Seventh one actually is again, when this is a part of the interview process wherein we always want people to ask us questions in the sense, and when we leave it and if people don't have questions, we really don't know whether they thinking they have understood what they are coming in for, or they have the depth of what we require. So ask relevant question about how you will fit in, what kind of projects which you will get. Don't ask things about what are the office timings and how many holidays are allowed, because that then gives an impression of you have your decision being based on the working hours and the working times and the holidays around. So that gives a different impression. But ask relevant questions about the type of work, the type of people, the culture of the company, the are they allowed to experiment beyond the projects which they're working on? What are the new experimental projects or innovations that are happening? Is there an innovation cell in the company or not? Have questions which actually you're interested in, and you want to have that exposure in the company as well. So that gets them thinking as well that yes, you are thinking just beyond, not just what you would be doing, but beyond what else you can do around for the company and with the company, so to say. So it's important to have your questions ready, because that also gives them a purview into your thought process of how do you think, and what are your ambitions going ahead in life. So as I said that the ambitions and the goals, if they are clear in your story of where you want to be, you would actually come up with the right questions to the company. The one thing which also, and this relates to being honest with your skill set and all, is, and this is our interview process also, we say that, okay, we know that you would have done some things very, very well, and you're very aware of what you have done fantastic. Tell us things where you failed and what you learned from those failures, and that actually the failures are the ones which give the true character of how you overcome them, and how do you actually move ahead, just not get stuck onto what was the problem. So what is your problem solving capabilities? How do you deal with stress? How do you deal with challenges? How do you deal with the team not listening to you? How do you deal with the team having different ideas and a lot of conflict happening? How do you resolve those conflicts? So talk about failures, and talk about your challenges which you have faced in your different college projects, or lifetime, or anywhere else where you would have done your internships and jobs. Talk about those and bring the finesse of your character of how you had overcome those failures. That actually gives a lot of strength to what you're talking, and it is engaging when people hear about this thing. So because everybody talks about, I have done this and I have done so many different projects, I have done it so well and I'm brilliant at my work, but why am I brilliant is because I have faced so many challenges as well and while doing this. So talk about your challenges, talk about failures, make sure that you include them as a part of your narrative. Also, it is a good idea when you are in an interview to ask people how much time they have. So if when I said layering your presentation, I also mean that if you ask them that you have half an hour, then you pace your presentation accordingly. If they have 1 hour, you go in detail one of them. If they have 10 minutes, because trust me, in the first 5 sentences when people say things, the most of the time the interviewer has already made up their mind whether you are a fit or not. And so the length of the presentation should always be in consensus with how much time people have, and you should have your presentation split into 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and an hour kind of a band. The 9th thing is when you are either in a job or in a interview, be comfortable. Don't be I know it is very difficult not to be nervous, but at the same time, when you're comfortable, you talk a lot more calmly and a lot more sense in terms of assessing what the other person is asking, and being wanting to be in that place. So you will be a lot more cognizant of what is happening around you. Like some of the things which one company, when we recently went, and they said their interview process, one of the things which the the leader did was he would keep a bottle lying down on the table, and he would just observe whether the person is actually picking up the bottle and making it straight or not. So how aware of are you, and how comfortable are you in terms of just being present in the room. Another actually example, and this is my son's example. We were changing his school in the 8th grade. He was an 8th grade is not a very easy age for children to actually shift schools, leaving all the friends, all the comfort zone which they have in the school. But when he went to the school which he is going right now, what they did was when they went when he went there, they asked him, the first thing they asked him, what are your hobbies? And he said music. So instead of anything else, they just took him to the music room. He was playing his guitar, and teachers kept coming in and out, and they were asking him questions. And he felt very, very comfortable in the entire environment. And he then got the kind of attention which he would wanted, and he actually wanted to just go to that school because he knew that he would be comfortable in that zone. So a lot of companies, and especially I can talk about Tracklink for now. Our first aim when people come in is to actually make the person very, very comfortable and have normal conversation with with people. So if you're given that opportunity, grab it with open arms. Don't be shy about, don't know, I'm okay, and you can ask me any questions. If they say that do you want to go to the brainstorming table and have a discussion, go ahead and have it. This thing, if you're comfortable with that. If you're not, you can obviously say no. But I'm saying be comfortable if you're given an opportunity to make yourself in the zone where you feel that I am I'm relaxed and I can answer any question. I am in my best avatar in this format. So completely okay in you asking that. Like, for example, if you're not comfortable with speaking in English and you want to speak and say any other language, it is completely fine for you to, in the beginning itself, lay it out and say that, is it okay if I speak in Hindi? And it's complete, and it is much better that you speak the language which you're comfortable with, rather than you stressing out in terms of translating it and speaking English whenever you have to. People will appreciate your upfront nature and the kind of intelligence at that point, that this is what my comfort zone is, this is what I can talk. And if they're not comfortable, then maybe that is not the right fit for you. So be open about things, be comfortable about asking for what you want, and I'm sure that people respond in the same way. So you need to catch attention, and that attention can be caught only when you are comfortable in the skin which you have. So be comfortable. And the last and not the least, is that when you enter a company, be inquisitive about everything. It's not just a project which is being given to you and you're working on that particular event and you will not look left and right. See what is happening around, see what new projects are doing, see what interesting things are happening. Maybe they will not invite you by themselves, but if you see something happening, go ahead and ask. People are always ready to help and actually discuss things. See how you can become a part of those brainstorming sessions, of the solutioning exercises. See if you have a voice around those things. So like for us, it is there was a intern whom we got, and this is 3 years back, and I still remember that girl. We had given her one carry forward design to do. She was a brilliant UI designer, and we had given her, okay, she's a good designer, and hence she was placed under a lead UI, and she was doing that project. But within the 2 months which she was there, we had started including her in the product discussions. We had started including her in the research which we were doing. She just had a voice. She had and she was not inhibited about saying that, can I join this meeting? So when she saw that something is happening, it was like, I'll be a fly on the wall, but can I listen in? And when she listened in, she just had to say 1 or 2 points which she felt were important and she could contribute, very logical ones. And that made her shine above the rest. And he said, I mean, she's an intelligent girl. She's having a voice. She has an opinion, and that was well received. And that gave us a confidence that other brainstorming sessions we started including. So I'm saying, be inquisitive. Don't be in your shell. Venture out. Whenever you're as a design professional, especially, I think it is important for you to be inquisitive about everything which is happening in the company. Not being how do I put it nicely? So not being problematic about it, that I want to be everywhere, but at the same time being smart about what I want to learn and what is the right time for me to learn. Whether it is after the session has happened, just taking the key takeaways from the session, or I want to be a part of the session, depending on where people want to include you in. So for me, I think these are some pointers which I, from the experience, have culled out, but I will be happy to answer questions. I don't know whether this gave you any takeaways or not, but it would be good to have questions around what y'all are facing in terms of when you're creating your portfolios or applying for internships or going out for a job. What are the roadblocks which you feel, and happy to answer around.
Yes, ma'am. So we do have a couple of questions in the chat. So I'll just read them out. So Sahaj from 4th year asked, there's a good meme which showcased how people were adhere to WhatsApp because of privacy, but then came back because of loneliness on Signal. So do you think as a designer, our job is also that when people come to our application, we need to quickly upgrade and promote it to surpass our competitors? Is this something you expect applicants to think about?
So if I understand the question, it is like what level of solutioning is expected from the applicant? Is that the question?
So I think it's that, so if people switch from WhatsApp to Signal and they don't find it as, yeah. So like, how do you go about it? Or do you expect applicants to have that kind of thinking that how might we upgrade and promote our application to surpass the competitor?
Yeah, so I think it's a very good question, because these are the questions which the interviewer will ask you. So if, say, the first question, if we are talking about, and we say, like in our case, we have hackathons and there is a group discussion happening around data privacy of WhatsApp, for example. Now, one is that first, is your standpoint that a Signal or a Telegram better than WhatsApp? If yes, then what are the the plus points which your application has, and why do you feel so? And if you have strong reasoning about why it is better, then how do you actually explain, or what is the best mechanism you would deploy in terms of getting users on board on that particular application? So if you have a thought process around that, say it. And if you don't, it is completely fine. So I have not thought about it of how I would, or nor do I have the depth right now to say that what exactly would be the methods. I would love to learn that. But at the same time, I feel that these are the 4 things that make Signals apart from WhatsApp. You can leave it at that as well. But if you have an idea around, to bring people on board, I will publish a short infographics story about the top 10 competitive features of WhatsApp and Signal. I will publish that, and I will on social media make people more and more aware of it, or I can send emailers for people to be aware of it. So different ways of tackling the same thing. If you have the awareness and the answer to how you want to provide it, go ahead and say it. If you don't, it's good to accept and say that right now I probably don't have an answer, but I can research and think about it. But I think, in my opinion, these are the things. So you really don't have to be ready with the answers, but how you tackle the question is going to be more important. With how much honesty do you tackle the question? Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, so the next one's from Sneha from year 3. So she asked that, ma'am, you mentioned that a mistake students make is exaggerating their skills as perhaps a security net that they're capable enough of joining for the job. So what are some other factors you feel students should try focusing on to instead of that particular thing?
I think playing to your strength is very, very important. Analyzing you're all solution designers, you all know your strengths, what is it that you contribute, and might be multiple things which you can contribute to, but knowing your strength, playing to your strength is very important. Whereas you can always mention that I have, say for example, you have illustrator skills, or you have sketch skills, or you have research skills which are very strong, whatever. So you might have 8 or 10 skills, but you should mention that out of these, this is my comfort zone, this is my strength, I think that I can bring a lot of value in this, but I also know A, B, C, D things, but in these 2 things I would want to go more deep dive and learn more if your company has an opportunity for me to do so. If not, then I would like to focus on this strength. So I think the thought clarity which you give the employer, in the sense that this is my strength, this is what I think I can bring to the table right from day one. The others, I need learning, I need hand-holding, I need this thing. So be clear about your capabilities is what I was saying. So the focus should be on your strength at that point. See, remember, you are the protagonist of your own story. So you need to play to your strength. What makes your character? What makes your personality? And that personality needs to be brought out.
Yes, ma'am. So the next one is from Atharva from Year 4. So he asked, design as a field is starting to gain importance and its impact is valued much more than ever before. You've been working in the field of experience design for over a decade. How has this field of design evolved in India over time, and what does it have for us in the future?
Okay, that is a very, very broad question, but let me try and answer it. So in 2010, when we came back, the term user experience was non-existent, so to say, in the country, right? And it actually, we had to go an extra mile to be able to convince people that, you need to have a thought process around why you're presenting what you're presenting on. And this is only it's a time of when only websites were prevalent so much, and applications were just starting to come in. So we had to actually give a lot of services free to our clients to be able to make them understand what user experience actually means. So unke liye it was a home page and an inside page, and we're done. So, and that also very, very design led. So the thought process was done on design. So that from there to now, where at least 5 years back, when user experience actually became a recognized field, and they were then came the customer experience, then came the service design, then came a lot of other layering on top that happened on top of it. Now I think the field is evolving, and when it is moving out of the screens themselves. And I think NMIMS at Bindyola are very lucky that you're doing this course, because this is a step ahead of the curve in terms of education itself. You're learning solutioning right now, and it is not limited to whether you're designing a physical product, a digital project, or a phygital project, or a whole service design. You're solutionizing the problem itself. So I think you're very lucky when you're doing this, because this is the future. No matter whether you're doing, you are a drone architect, or whether you are in the manufacturing plant trying to provide a solution, or whether you are doing the whole transformation of a company. I think being a problem solver, if you know what problems and how do you solve that problem, and being a researcher is going to be the future. So, and you should be able to switch fields depending on the problem statement which is coming in. So I think as a future, we will move out from just user experience in terms of digital to a service architect for companies. It will be a solution architect, so to say, for across the board. So, I mean, in my limited knowledge, I think that is where the future is headed, and NMIMS is doing a very good job in bringing this field up front now, because up till now, design colleges have it as a part of the curriculum, not as the curriculum itself. So, which is a good and encouraging thing for the future.
Right. So Manna from fourth year asks, people often find it hard to accept failure, let alone mention it. What are some ways in which people can overcome this mental block and develop an attitude of self-improvement?
Brilliant. Actually, yeah, nobody wants to talk about failures, but I think it is time now that we not only embrace our failures, we actually celebrate our failures. So, after the whole, build fast, learn fast, fail fast, and rebuild again, that whole philosophy, I think the understanding of people around failures uh, failures are the ones which actually give you the right mindset and the toolkit to actually succeed. So if you have not had failure, it is very difficult for you to say that you have been successful, because you've not seen that kind of the road which you have traversed is not that strong. It might be a short this thing, but if you have had failures, you have learned from the failures, and then you're moving ahead. I think that embracing and being proud of it, that you have done, you have tried, and it's okay if it failed, because I have gained ABCD things from this failure, and I'm moving ahead of it. So that mental, yes, it is a mental block, but that mental block has to transform itself in being something negative to something being extremely positive as a career path. So, and what people look at is not just stating the failure. Stating the failure is not going to help. What you learned from the failure is the important thing to talk about. And when you're talking about, then that is you're automatically saying that when you learned this, that means you came out as a winner, right? So you remember that slide, when you overcome the conflict and the risk is when you become a winner. So it's the success is a parameter of how you came out of it. So you need to be proud of your failures and celebrate failures. Ki, haan, theek hai, ye hua. But out of that, there was an immense amount of learning which I did in that thing. So I don't think it's you would practice it, but you need to embrace it as well. And you will see that people appreciate the honesty and as well as the thought process which you bring to the table, that yes, it is okay to fail. In fact, one of the things which we tell our people, and this goes across the board, is that take risks. And so, earlier we were very hands-on, and we never used to let go of our control. So we were looking at each and every project which is happening. We would say, "Ek bhi kuch galat nahi ho jana chahiye." When the client sees it, there should be no mistake in the presentations. And for that reason, we were unable to give control to our people, and that actually was our failure in that sense. So when we started telling them, you go ahead and do whatever you like, to the best of your ability, as long as you have put in your 100%, the client, even if the client thrashes the entire presentation, we are fine with it. Doesn't matter. But it is important for you to go and do that presentation and make it by yourself and own up. Even the failure and the success both belong to you. So whatever happens. And that was the enablement which actually people today also feel, that no matter what happens, whatever mistakes we make, we know that there are people behind our back who will take care of if things go south. So, and we were at some point even okay to let clients go if they were not okay with it. So people are doing stuff, if they went wrong and the clients really can't take it, it is okay for us to that it was completely fine. But people need to be empowered to be able to take their own decisions at some point. So for me, it is important that, it might be different for different companies, but I think right now the genre of design companies which are coming up, and most of them are our very close friends, and we are competitors, but at the same time have an immense amount of friendship, and we all feel the same thing, that people need to learn from failures, because each one of us at some level have failed in certain things and then taken a step again. So embrace it, be proud of it, is what I would say.
Yes, ma'am, that's really nice. So we have a question from Raj from the fourth year. So how do recruiters react to highly conceptual projects that have a deep story to it? And is it advisable to have these kind of projects in the portfolio compared to more problem-centric projects that solve issues people face on a day-to-day basis?
It's an interesting question, actually. So let me answer it in two ways. One is that it says two things about the person whom we are looking at. One is if you have the real projects of real problem solving which you have created is and this problem has been given to you either by the industry or by the college and you're solving that problem, it is you're reacting to a certain brief that has been given to you, right? Which is a good enough scenario. Now, when you have a conceptual project, it says two things about you. One, you had the initiative and you had the thought process and you had the intelligence of identifying what the problem was and looking for a solution for that problem and having the courage to put it in the portfolio in a way that, it showcases a side of problem solver, being a problem solver for you. So I think at the stage of where you're applying for a job or whether you're applying for internship, it is important that if you have such ideas, put it on the paper. It is an extra effort from your side, but put it on paper because it shows a different side of you. A lot of the companies right now, especially in design, they are setting up center of excellences within the companies. Innovation labs are being set up. People look for people who think beyond just the projects and what new can be done and what are the real issues which are there in the in the environment around us and how are we solving them. So like for example, we keep throwing challenges within the organization. So people are doing, we have banking and financial services are our biggest client, then the e-commerce and then media and entertainment. But for us, it was important that what real problems are we solving, and people don't get caught up only into these transactional and day-to-day projects, and they have a motivation to do something else. We keep throwing challenges, bring out a real problem, see what experimentations we can do, whether it is voice-enabled experimentations, whether it is AR, VR experimentations, or whether it is just, somebody came up with the entire project of solving the logistics issue of the Indian Railways. It was nothing, nobody had assigned us for that project, but we still did it. And we did approach the government for saying that we can solve this problem there. So long story short, I think it is good to have, if you have thoughts around it, if you have put in your effort to create such a solution, put it in the portfolio. I think it adds value. Makes sense? Yeah.
So Preshita has a question and I had a similar one. So what would be some things to keep in mind when working for an agency versus a product-based company? Anything beyond the obvious pros and cons? Firstly, is there a difference in the way one presents oneself? Secondly, what is your opinion? What in your opinion should be the direction when starting out as a fresher?
So, so it's the three parts. Starting out as a fresher is you're setting up your own, or you're saying as a fresher in a company or in a product company, in a design company versus a...
in a company.
In a company. Okay. So I'll leave the obvious ones out, as you said, like, the company culture and the kind of agency culture is a little madhouse because, anything and everything comes your way. The product companies are a lot more structured in the way they operate. I think, and I might be biased towards this entire thing, but I think there is, when you join a product company, there is one focus which you have. So your mindset should be oriented towards, you can't really diversify into a lot of other things which you can do for the company, because you will derail the entire mindset of the product company itself. So in the sense that if you are in a product company, like take a ClearTrip example, for example, ClearTrip has a strong design team within the company, and their main objective is how to keep improving the product on a daily basis, how to bring new things, how to communicate well. So those are the challenges which they face, and they are mostly one, reactive to the problems which consumers are facing, and two, proactive in what new they can do for that particular product in the market. So in that also, they also keep dividing, saying that this is a core innovation which we can do on the product itself. There can be an adjacent innovation which they can keep doing for new markets or new products. which they can add on as an extra service, or there is a pure play disruption of this is one product, can we get into the other service offerings as well. So I'm saying, so in a product company, it revolves around a certain piece, and you have to orient yourself as a designer, as a professional. You have to orient yourself to the culture of the organization, to the mindset, and to the direction in which the company is headed. So the leeway of you thinking that I will go in this company and I will disrupt what they're doing and will try to bring in a lot of new things, you might set yourself up for frustration, so to say. So you have to align yourself when you're going to a product company, especially the established product companies. When you come to the agency side of it, there are different projects, different levels, different companies which you're interacting with, and more often than not, you will need to put on your thinking hat and try to do different things for different companies. So one of the expectation when different product companies come to a design agency is that they will add on to the innovation layer on top of it. So you're constantly thinking, you're constantly on your feet, you want to have different methods of trying to bring new value to your clients. So I think the basic difference in the agency culture and the product company would be how you align yourself as a professional, and which way do you really want to go. What is, again, coming back to what is your strength and how do you bring that strength to the table. And hence be very careful where you decide which way do you want to go. And this might again be my biased opinion of what I've seen, but in effect, I think orienting yourself to the company values and their culture is going to be the key as a professional. So whether you fit in or whether you are an iconoclast in that same something which you'll have to figure out. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it does. Thank you so much.
Okay, so the next one is from Kashish from Year 4. So as you mentioned that comfort with each other is important for both the parties, the job applicant as well as the company. As an applicant, if a person does not feel comfortable in the atmosphere of a company, should they simply deal with it to get the job, or express that to the company during the interview? What impression will that showcase, and what is the smartest way to go about it?
So see, one thing is that if people around you are nasty and you're not feeling comfortable, I don't know whether you really want to join the company or not. It is ultimately you join people, you don't join a company. So you need to be comfortable around the people around whom you are interviewing with as well. And if you sense that it is a stance which the interviews are taking just to make you feel uncomfortable and see how you react in an uncomfortable situation, then it is then you need to gear up to that situation and try and make yourself a lot more confident and answer with that great. But that sensing of what their intent is going to be important. The second thing is that if you're really uncomfortable when in a situation, you can actually voice it out. I don't think there is a problem in you voicing it out very politely, saying that I'm really sorry, but I'm not feeling very comfortable. Can I have a glass of water, or can I have a coffee and make myself a little calm, and then can we restart? It's completely fine. It again shows your the strength of your character, that you are actually thinking about it, that it will not go well if you're not comfortable in your so take a break, get your thoughts aligned, figure out what you want to do in that environment, whether you really want to continue that interview and finish it, or you are absolutely not comfortable. Then you can say that I'm sorry, I'm not comfortable in this entire thing. If you think you can carry on and finish the interview and then take a call, go ahead and do it. It is your gut which will tell you what is the right thing to do at that point. But it is a good idea, even if you're uncomfortable, one, say that you are, allow them, give them an opportunity to make you comfortable. If they still don't make you comfortable, then it is your decision whether you want to continue with that interview or you don't want to continue with that interview. But give that opportunity, make yourself heard that, you know, you're feeling a little uncomfortable with the situation. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Right. So Hasika from fourth year asked, as a UX designer, thinking for innovative solution is what is crucial and most loved by us. As a user experience design studio, when evaluating projects and portfolios, what is the weightage given between the visual execution of the project and the idea behind it?
So depends on you're applying as what. So if you're applying as a visual designer, then yes, visuals will hold a lot of value. But if you're applying as a strategist, if you're applying as a solution architect, if you're applying as a UX designer, then the thought process and how you went about doing things and what was the clarity of your thinking is going to be the most critical, and visual output is not important at all. So even if it is scribbled notes on paper is completely fine, but if it showcases your thought process is what it is. So the way at Fractaling, the way we recruit is that we have a full day hackathon that happens, which starts with a group discussion, as I said, that, you know, what kind of opinions about the worldly things that you have. So it starts with a little bit of a discussion of seeing how the communication skills, how opinions, how well aware are you, starts with that, then goes into a specific zone of what the job profile needs. And in that job profile, if it is a solution designer, then you know, it's just paper scribbles of the problem statement given to you to how you structure your thoughts and put it to paper is the only evaluation criteria there is. So depends on what you are applying for. A visual designer, if you have to be recruited as a visual designer or a UI designer, then the UI skills become very, very important. Then the final output actually is taken into consideration.
Okay, ma'am, understood.
Okay.
So the next one's from Asavali from year 2. So she says, ma'am, earlier you had mentioned about being a thinker and not an implementer. Can you elaborate on this? Moreover, what traits do you look for in a portfolio or projects for calling a person a thinker?
Okay. See, when you... Okay, so it starts with the kind of brief which is given to you. I'll try to break it down from a client side of it, okay? Now, a client has given you a brief and say they come back, and for the simplest of examples, say earlier days, they used to come back with us and saying that we need a website and we need a one Android or an iOS application for this ABCD product. Now, an implementer's first reaction would be to go ahead and start solutionizing for the website or the application design, which is the ask of the hour, right? So then you become an implementer. Ki, haan, meko ye bola tha, now I can break it down. I will make my site architecture. I will do this, and I will understand the audiences, and I will do this. So that thought process of the entire journey which a designer does happens. But that is an implementer, according to me. Now, when you start challenging the brief in a way that you start understanding the business requirement and say, okay, these are your audiences. Now, these audiences, now say, for example, the company is a manufacturer of textile, upholstery and home furnishings and things like that. Now, this and most of their business is happening on B2B. Now, for you to challenge and say that you are a B2B company, most of your business is happening on a business to business model, your website is not going to help you. Your B2B clients are again going to find, you know, one neck to catch whom they can call and strike a deal with and give them all the kind of presentations which are needed. They will not come to your website and see. I'm saying it as an example, but you know, that level of thinking that whether website is the need of the hour or the application is the need of the hour, or there is something else which is like, you know, the virtual factory tour which is going to be more critical, or virtual presentations which your sales people in person can do with that team is going to be more important. That is a solution designer. That is a thinker who will think beyond the brief and say that what exactly is the requirement. It might very well be that, you know, after doing all of that analysis, it still breaks down to creating a website and this thing. But have you done that due diligence of thinking that this is the right solution, or the right ask from the client is a thinker, so to say. So I think that, according to me, is the base. Can you challenge the brief? Can you, and if you validate or not validate depending on what you have challenged, and then start taking over the exact steps of the process to follow. So that's the difference between a thinker and implementer. Implementer को आप बोल दोगे, वो he will work within the boundaries of what has been given, but going beyond the boundaries and thinking and then saying and narrowing it out and converging it to the right solution is a thinker, according to me. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am, it does. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So moving on to the next one, Shreya from Year 4 asks, as a fresher, especially in COVID times, we might apply for jobs along with people who have more experience as compared to us. What, according to you, are few things we can bring to the table to try and compensate for that?
Very, very difficult actually to answer this question, and I really don't have I honestly don't have an answer to your question, because to be honest, in COVID times, when we have got internship applications, we have found it, or the fresher job applications, we have found it difficult to respond very, very clearly with this requirement, because the problem is that when you are in an in-person environment, there is a lot of learning that happens passively, and you're seeing different things happening, and you're grasping different things along the way. You're seeing the different methods people are deploying, and you're learning there. When you are working in an independent, siloed environment where you're given one project, your possibility of exploring and being inquisitive, as on the screen, becomes a little thin, because how many people can you call? How many people will you interact with? You're not in that physical environment. So it is challenging. There is no doubt that this time is challenging for looking out fresh for a job and an internship. But I think the way to go about it would be, and this is what we are trying to experiment within our organization as well, is that we create different upskilling groups. This we have created, and every person who joins in, there are people or buddies associated with that person to take care, not only from the project point of view of what the person is working on and what upskilling that person needs, but also in and around giving them an overview of what else is happening, what are the different things which are going on in the studio, having a lot of breakout sessions that happen which they can join in. So our companies are deploying such methods, but trust me, onus is more on the companies to facilitate this learning rather than you figuring out your way in such an environment. So you have to be careful when you're choosing that as I said, you need to ask questions. You need to ask these questions to the company, saying that, what other form of learning can I get? What is the environment? What is how can I interact with other people? What are the methods of meeting them? Are their offices open in some days of the week which we can go and interact with people? So you have to make sure that you make your intent clear, that you want to learn a lot more than just the project which you're on, and how does the company facilitate that learning for you. So it will a mix. The onus is not entirely on you. You will not be able to help that shift in the company. So be careful of which company you're choosing and how you're going about the applications for the new jobs, is what I would say. It is difficult. I mean, right now we are facing it. We are trying to resolve the issue. Unprecedented as the situation is, but I think people are coping up. People are bringing new methods and ways to improve upon the situation. But I don't think that you should be too worried about it, because yes, you will find a job. It's not that you will not find a job, because people are constantly looking for good talent around. But what you would need to do is expand and make your intent clear, that you want to do more than just that, this one project or one team to interact with.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, so Rahil from 4th year wants to know that if a student who has interned for more than 4 months as a UI UX intern in a company, should he be applying in these specific fields for immediate work experience after college, or can he explore in different fields like interaction design and design research and keep UI UX as backup? How would the industry recruiters and subject matter experts take this up?
Okay, so I think what you're asking is that can you explore different fields before deciding what exactly you're interested in and then come back to it? And will people view you from the same lens as you were an interaction designer? And will you have lost those number of years in between to be able to demand from the industry what you otherwise if you would have stuck to a field demanded? Am I correct in understanding the question?
Yes, ma'am. I wanted to ask the same thing.
Okay, so Rahil, I think it is good to explore from the company standpoint, from your own personal growth standpoint. I think it is very, very important for you to explore. You cannot stick to one thing if you're not entirely sure of it. Go explore, do your, try your hands at different things at the start of your career. Don't worry too much about how much you will be paid for what. But if you decide that you want to go ahead with this particular choice, maybe it's a good idea at that point to go do a master's to figure out in depth when you have decided that this is the field or the line or the specialization you want to excel in. Do a master's and then come back. Your master's automatically adds a lot of value to your this thing. If not, when you come back, although you have tried your hands in different things and come back to it, the experience which you have gained along the way will add on to the kind of number of years or the kind of different solutions which you have provided, and you will come out as a thinker any which ways because you've tried your hands in different things. But as a solutions person, whether it is for a digital product or a interaction project or whether it is a real life problem which you have solved, it doesn't really matter. You have tried solving problems, and that is more important. Other than that, there are tools which you need to learn, and those tools I think are not a problem when it comes to problem solving, right? And the tools are like a matter of a week that you can get comfortable with the tools. If you're a thinker, you're a thinker, no matter which stream you're going to. So I mean, in my personal opinion, you should explore, make sure that which specialization you want to go in for, and then jump into it directly. Post your exploration is what I would say. I don't think industry sees it in any way. Industry respects the kind of clarity which you have brought to your own self and your own professional life. Like I'll give you an example of there was one person who had started as a UI designer with us, and after 2 years he said that I am okay at UI, but I want to do UX as well. So we trained him and we actually got him to do a lot more UX projects along with the UI. Then he shifted to pure UX because he became good at that. And once he had done that, he got bored of it and he said, I want to try front-end development, learning front-end development. So we trained him at front-end development as well. So, if you're willing to explore and if you want to try out new things, I'm sure that the company facilitates that kind of learning as well. Now, whether they want you to do it along with what you're doing so that you are still valuable to the company, or they want you to, they are willing to take that risk on you saying, okay, you try it and we will see how it goes. That's very company dependent, but I think more often than not, I feel that the companies are okay for letting people explore their, the things which they like to do.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for answering this question.
Cool.
Right. So Hitiksha asked, as a UX designer, when you're applying to a company or field in which you don't have projects to showcase, how do you explain to them what our role would be and how would we fit in the company?
So I don't think people expect you to have, so if you're applying fresh or if you're applying for a different job profile, I don't think people expect you to have projects in your portfolio, because if you're showing portfolio, showcasing projects in your portfolio, the first thing will be the validity of that project itself, right? Of how and when you did it. So if you're shifting streams or if you're applying fresh for a job and you have not done anything in that stream, the best thing is to again be honest and say that these are my strengths. I want to learn this. I want to get into this field. I don't have an experience in it, but I think that I will be good at it because of ABCD reasons, because of the things which I have done in past. Will you be willing to take a chance with me? I think that people do give that flexibility. In our organization, people come from media and advertising background, and they want to try a hand at UI UX, and we're completely okay with it. And they come after 3 or 4 years of experience saying that we worked in this field, but I think we have a bent of mind, we have a solutioning bent of mind, and I think we'll be good at it. So with that, it's small.
Sorry, I don't know how to help
Okay.
with that.
My
Here are other things you can try.
okay, that is my Google trying to help me. Yeah, so I'm saying that it's okay to shift. It's okay to say that I don't have an experience in that thing and I will want to try and thing. The only thing that they like what we do when people come with 3 or 4 years of experience and they want to shift streams is that task which I was talking about, in the interview, the task itself, we come to know what kind of critical thinking they have. They might not know the tools, but they have that bent of mind in terms of being able to provide the solution that's good enough. And rest, everything the training can take care of. So, and in effect, what I'm saying is that, it doesn't matter whether you have the same type of projects in your portfolio or not. What matters is how you think and how you bring that thinking to the table. So, at the most, what will happen is that they will say that, we will be taking a risk in hiring you at this point. We might not be able to match up to your salary because this will be a training ground for you. Are you willing to take that risk at your end? And we evaluate in 3 months if you have come up to the level where you need to be as the other people in the same pay grade. Then well enough, we're happy to revise and say that you have in 3 months learned. This probation has proved very, very beneficial for you. You have worked very hard to reach here, and we are happy to match it in that sense. So that might be the only conversation difference that might happen. But at the same time, the opportunity for you to shift, I think every company, I'm talking about agencies, design agencies right now, are willing to take that risks with people, especially smart, intelligent people who want to have this shift. Is completely okay. They welcome people with open arms, because it is a matter of 2-3 months that you get into the the entire learning of the process and the tools required for delivering that job. Does that make sense? Is that what your question was?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Right. So Cheers from fourth year asks, so ma'am, what I have observed when interacting with people at various events, user experience or UX has become a term which has a variety of meanings today. I understand that design is a gray area, but do you think this rapid change and the casual understanding of the term may restrict innovation or stagnate wild ideas that could be a game changer, especially for graduates entering the industry?
So what you're saying is that the processes which are set as or the terms which are being used as user experience might limit the explorations which of the ideas which people can bring to the table. Well, that is actually not true, because whereas the term user experience, yes, it has been abused quite a bit in the industry, and not only user experience, I think the whole innovation word in itself has been abused quite a bit, and people use innovation for, implementing a chatbot is innovation, for example. It's a different people use the industry uses it for a different purpose, but when it comes to your professional environment where you would be working, it is a serious activity, right? And when we talk about the processes which are being followed, the entire and the design thinking method which you would have learned, or how the innovation thinking that happens, and what is innovation versus what are the myths of innovation when it comes to that thought process. I think that is embedded in your DNA right now when you graduate from college. So when you are having a conversation, when you bring that to the table, I think the industry is a lot more receptive to listen to those ideas. I don't think, that you will be restricted because of that. So it depends on the environment. So, but if you are, for example, in for the lack of better words, in a very hierarchical, legacy-based company, they might not listen, which is because there is a particular method to how things operate. But in an agency culture, in a culture where the same legacy companies have outsourced their design to an agency, and when they are saying something, they are a lot more receptive about people bringing in new ideas and seeing what new things can be done for their business. So I'm saying that it is not challenging according to me, because the way we've seen businesses grow and how we have been able to add value to our clients, I think they're more than receptive in terms of, whether leave alone the term user experience or customer experience or service design or digital transformation, leaving alone the terms, their one ask is, how do we do better for our company, whether it is internal change management for my company, whether it is the consolidation of everything which I am doing, or bettering my manufacturing process, or whether it is creating new digital assets for me, and having my omni-channel experience stretched to different touch points for my various B2C versus B2B versus B2B to C clients. They're all very receptive in terms of bringing new ideas and new innovations to the thing. So I think more than ever now, people have the understanding of the value of design thinking and innovation in the country specifically. So it's a good time for designers, or especially the solution designers, to be a part of teams right now. So it's a good time to start a career at this point, because that maturity right now, not only abroad, in India is quite a bit. So I think it's an encouraging time to be a designer right now.
Yes, ma'am, I understood.
Yeah. Cool, Shreyas.
Right. So Sahesh from fourth year asks, do you think a portfolio should have more individual projects rather than group projects? And does it really make a difference and have any kind of impression on the interviewer?
Yeah, I think it can be either or. If you have done more individual projects, have more individual projects. If you have done more group projects, have group projects. It doesn't really matter. But in the group projects, make sure you highlight what your contribution to the group has been, rather than taking the credit for the entire project. Make sure that you highlight that. It doesn't really matter. From an interviewer side of it, doesn't really matter whether you have individual or group projects on the portfolio. The group projects actually bring a very softer side of an individual as well, in terms of how you interacted with the team, how did you play to the strengths of each member of the team. And that is very, very critical when they relay it back within their organization to see how this person will fit into my team structure, kind of a thing. So I think it's good to have group projects as well onto the portfolio.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So Shashank wants to know, how does a corporate design career look like for a UX designer over a span of 15 to 20 years? How does it progress from being an intern to a team member to maybe a design team leader? What is the hierarchy of roles for a designer? It might be different across different companies, but looking for a general outline. Also, how long does it take to move up the ladder?
This question will be well answered by one of my colleagues who have actually traversed this journey from from an intern to this, and that will be better answered there. But I'll attempt and answer it for you from a Fractaling perspective. So, in terms of job hierarchy, we actually have a very flat structure in the sense that anybody can walk in and be a part of any project they want. In the capacities can be decided by the team members who are working on that project. So when I say that if you are an intern, and as I said earlier, if you want to be a part of brainstorming sessions, you're most welcome and free, and nobody's going to stop you to do that. In terms of, yes, we do have titles because people do need to grow in their careers as well, and have to see that success coming in. So from a UX standpoint, from an experienced designer standpoint, you start as an intern, you become a experienced designer, you go to a senior experienced designer, you start leading teams and become a lead designer. Then you go to becoming a strategist. That means you're actually strategizing the products from that end, and from the strategist you go on to become an associate director with the company, and then you can have the C-suite jobs coming up. So in terms of a short structure, these are the structures which happen from a UX side. Similarly, from a UI standpoint, you start with UI designer to senior UI designer to lead designer to senior lead or art director, and from the art director you want to become an associate director for creative. So then the CCO kind of a title. So in terms of growth possibilities, these are the different titles which are associated. But it does, and it is a normally design industry is a very merit based industry, wherein you can have just 2 years of experience and be an art director. And this is true for my company. I have 2.5 years of experience. People who are actually art directors right now, who are brilliant in their work, who just can hold the client's attention, have very methodical thinking and structured thoughts, and bring immense value to the entire team. So, and there are people who have 15, 16 years of experience who are still at lead design level. So, it is a merit-based industry. The sooner or the better you prove yourself, and the more hard you work in terms of getting what is due to you, I don't think the industry holds back in giving you that kind of visibility and position. So, I think from a growth perspective, there are definitely levels, and you can grow step by step, but the time, in how much time you go to that level, is dependent on you and your skin in the game which you bring to the table. So I think the success is dependent on you and your hard work, I would say, and the talent which you bring to the table.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. That answers it. And good to know that it's a merit-based industry and doesn't depend on time.
It is definitely a merit-based industry, and my team will actually vouch for that, because we do get questions around तो इतना experience है, फिर भी मेरे को अभी यही role मिला है. So it's not experience. What is it that you have brought to the table, and that is it is important.
Yes,
so, yeah.
Thank you.
Cool, Shashank.
Yeah.
Right. I think we've covered up all the questions. So do you have any other things to tell us, ma'am? Like any more input from your end?
I think for me, it is. I'm actually very happy that you all had questions, and it is important that you'll clarify the doubts, and I can answer to the best of my ability in this case. But I'm saying that be uninhibited when you're going in the market. Don't be afraid of stepping into the industry. The only thing that you need to be very, very sure of is not to anybody else, but to yourself. Be very sure of your craft, and be very honest to yourself of what level of craft do you have. Never compromise on that. Till you have that level of confidence in your craft, there's no stopping you. There is no and especially I know in this in the agency world, I have not seen, and I know the founders of the top design agencies in the country. There is no politics in this agency world. So if you're true to yourself, if you're true to what you do, you will succeed. And make sure that you keep honing your craft and refining and keep learning as you go along. You can, like, I still say that I hold a lot of upskilling sessions with my in my company, but those upskilling sessions are not a one-way upskilling session. I am gaining so much. So even if there are interns who are in my group who are a part of upskilling session, I learn so much from them of their thought process, of how they are thinking in the entire thing. Whether it is women-related issues, whether it is design-related issues, whether it is how to behave with clients-related issues. It can vary across, but the perspectives which you get is so different. So be open to learning. Never get into a mindset of I know everything and I can tell everything how it is done, and people are not listening to me. That is a disastrous situation. That people are not listening to me. I am saying the right thing, and people who are not listening to me are bad people. They don't understand. That is a dangerous mindset to be in. See, try and understand the other's point of view, whether it is your client, whether it is your teammate, whether it is your junior. Understanding standpoints and people's point of view is very, very critical and important to your own growth. So be true to yourself, and don't worry about the industry. It will give you what you deserve, definitely. So that's my closing statement for this.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. That was really insightful. And I think all of us have a lot of takeaways from this talk. So we'll now invite our director, Professor Manisha Fatke, to end this with a few words.
Thank you so much, Priyanka, for spending this time. I think by far it's one of the largest, I mean, the most interactive session, because their life kind of depends upon it. They have so many questions, and you've really answered them in detail. I'm sure they're going to take away. But yeah, you also gave some character attributes, and that's very important because skills are learning. I mean, even at my age, I'm learning. So the only thing that keeps you standing upright is what you bring to the table as a character and a professional. So thank you for that. And I'm sure you heard her, and she, Rhythm introduced her professionally, but I'll let you a secret. Yeah, she is a great poet. She's a Hindi poet, and you should listen to it. Okay, that's how I connect with her. The rest is history. Thank you so much, Priyanka. I hope I see you again. You've been coming, but every year that you come, you'll find something new. And hopefully after the pandemic, when you visit us, there'll be a lot of new additions since you came in for the first batch. I think you probably interviewed the first batch. Yes. Yeah. So it's, and they are going to go out this year.
Yeah, fantastic.
It's a full
already. Wow.
Thank you so much, and have a great evening, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Loved having a conversation with you. Thank you.